Over 200,000 civil servants who are members of the Public Servants Association are taking to the streets today. There's been a deadlock in negotiations after government unilaterally implemented a 3% baseline wage increase in October. This is expected to be paid to all qualifying public servants starting next week. Public services are expected to be disrupted by the strike, especially at the Departments of Home Affairs, Transport and Border Posts. This may only be the start, as COSATU block of unions are yet to announce their plans. To talk more about the strike, I'm joined by Labour consultant Tony Healy. Mr. Healy, good morning, and thank you very much for your time. It seems the workers, as you would have heard, they are sticking to their guns. They're demanding that 6.5% increase, but government was actually quick to clarify that it's not a strike in terms of Section 77, but Section 64.1. Just talk us through the differences first.
Well, good morning. Yes, well, it's what you call protest action, and but a certificate has been issued for PSA members for strike purposes. I think it's interesting that they're striking or protesting for one day only. That is interesting, and not indefinitely as most strikes would occur. I think it's also important to remember that the PSA represents about 30% of the public sector. They're one of 12 unions. They're one of the bigger unions, of course, but they don't cover the whole of the public sector. And as you rightly pointed out already, primarily in transport, border control, and Department of Home Affairs, and some other ministries like employment and
But then talk to us about government's approach this time around of unilaterally increasing the wages by that 3%. What does it say about the relationship between the employer and employee currently?
Well, I think it's the same as you see with any employer and employee currently. Times are hard. GDP growth is slow. So you're seeing a situation where the interests of the employer and the employees and union members are both legitimate. And government says, you know what, no growth, low growth. Government doesn't make a profit. It's not a private sector business that makes a profit. So they're simply saying we don't have the funds.
But what could be the impact on our economy right now? Because if we're looking at Home Affairs, we look there, we could have some sort of stoppages in the logistics chain. And one can only imagine, if we had to quantify, how much that would impact our economy, especially at this time of the year. It's the festive season.
Yeah, very difficult for municipality workers, very difficult if you want to have your license renewed, very difficult if you wanted to enter and exit the country, very difficult at Home Affairs. It's going to take longer than normal. It already takes a long time. So there's no doubt that a strike in those areas, if it was to continue, would be very significant for many of the day-to-day issues and activities that are required to be maintained throughout the country from a public sector point of view.
And we understand from PSA on their side, they're saying should it become that protracted strike, they have funds available to then pay the workers. So clearly they mean business. They want perhaps government to move somewhat closer to the inflation. Do you think at this point government has any reserves to move a bit closer?
It's hard to say. I mean, I think we all know that government is cash strapped. There are major demands on Treasury for a whole host of legitimate and valid aspects of public life: education, transport, railways, health, etc. I would be surprised if government makes any significant moves. You must remember as well that 2 of the 12 unions have already accepted the 3% wage offer that government has made. I think it's unlikely that they'll move, but you never know. We saw them move in the Eskom strike earlier in the year. It's quite possible they'll make a move in this one too.
Then to the reasoning. There's been that reasoning that salaries have increased by an annual average of 2 percentage points above inflation for the past decade. Does it justify, though, I know, but does it justify not increasing now? Because workers could easily come and say, we committed to debt equivalent to those years when you were very generous with us. So right at this point, we still need more money because we now have debt equivalent to the amount you've consistently increased our salaries by.
You know, when you when you're bargaining, when you're negotiating wages, what's important is the present and the future. And the present and the future is such that government simply doesn't have the funds. That's the reality. On the other hand, the employers are certainly facing very serious hardships, and trying to reconcile those legitimate interests that both parties have is extremely difficult.
But then if we look at the impact on the economy, the fiscus, which one at this point would you believe weighs heavier? At this point, would it be in the best interest of government to perhaps move a bit closer, because the impact, nevertheless, if they continue to protest, would be so grave and felt by the rest of us? Which one in this case? Should the workers move a bit lower and accept the offer, or should government just look at the broader picture that they could somehow impact the economy if services are constrained?
Look, the theorists on collective bargaining would always say that both parties need to make some kind of compromise. And the same would probably apply in the current circumstances. I think what makes it difficult at the moment, there are a few things. For example, we must remember that in the previous 3-year deal, year 3 of the increase was not given for reasons related to various court proceedings. So it's a couple of years since these public sector workers have received an increase, and therefore that kind of justifies their current position. Not only are they looking for inflation, they're looking to recover what they lost last year. Having said that, we can't deny the fact that Treasury has legitimate financial constraints, and the fiscus is hard-pressed to find funds to, ESCOM needs money, education needs money, we need to fix the railways, etc., etc. We need more policemen and women on the beat. So it's a very, very difficult situation, as I've said, where both parties really do have legitimate positions, and it's hard to argue whether one or the other should make more or less compromises than the other.